No, that's not right. Hello and welcome to another edition of PRA Raw. Host David Russell, along with my co-host David Paulman. What's up, David?
How are you doing, Russell? Good to be back with another episode.
Yes, sir. Hey, man. So, word has it that you're writing a book. What's going on with that?
Yes, I've been studying the whole Calvinism issue so much that I finally decided to, bring all my findings together into a book. So yeah, the working title is Answering Calvinism.
Yep. So, with all the debates we've had and your entrance into the evangelical of Arminians or whatever it is, what is it called? The society? Yeah, right.
Of evangelical
Uh,
Arminians,
there
yes.
we go. So, with your entrance, like we talked a while ago on kind of our thoughts on it, and it got a good response. But you were leaning more towards Arminianism, but you're still kind of on the fence with Molinism and stuff. So, like, are you totally reformed Arminian now, right?
I mean, I'm still
Through your
cool with
studies.
Molinism and all. It's just Molinism isn't really a soteriology per se. It's so
Yeah.
broad. It's compatible with anything. So I'm fine with saying I'm a Molinist, but I would say soteriologically, I'm definitely a Reformed Arminian.
All right, because I bring that up. What is the name of the book anyway? So let's talk just a second about it.
Well, obviously the publisher gets to decide what the title is, but right now
Oh,
I would like to go with Answering Calvinism. So that's what I would suggest as the title.
okay. Okay. So you're going full out. You're going with the publisher and everything. You're just not doing it through Amazon and
I
stuff
would
like that.
rather not. No.
Okay. Right on. Right on. Well, that's cool, bro. Yeah, I bring it up because we're going to be talking, about James White tonight. Um, I titled it Whiteisms, so because he goes off the rails here on Frank Turek, and I thought, well, or you did, you sent me this video, thought that we should actually talk about it since we're still talking about presuppositionalism and Arminianism and Calvinism, they do play a part in everything he does. So I wanted to bring that in and kind of we're tackling it because he does talk about Molinism a bit in this um, video. So
No, he
with
doesn't
that said,
understand it.
yeah, I don't think he does. A lot of a lot of people don't take time to try to understand it. I think
Yeah,
they're already
that's true.
set in their way. They like where they're at, so they don't want to take on something that's deeply philosophical. And to me, that's just kind of like childish. If you're gonna make fun of it, at least know what you're making fun of. Yeah.
I agree.
But all right, so this video is basically James White tooting his own horn by saying, "Hey, look, this is how I responded to David Silverman. Look how Frank Turek responds to David Silverman." So this you're gonna see him kind of tooting his own horn and complimenting himself, giving himself a pat on the back, and try to explain why presuppositional apologetics is better than classical apologetics.
Yeah, and one
Are
thing I
you
want to
ready
make
for the Go ahead.
one thing just to make clear from the start is that I'm not really interested in defending Frank Turek for the purposes of this debate. I think he did a horrible job in his debate with David Silverman, and I think that yeah, Silverman really got him on the problem of evil. But what I want to respond to here is kind of White's claim that, oh, well, that means that the classical apologist doesn't have an answer to the problem of evil, whereas the presuppositionalist does. So, what I think here is that although, yes, Turek did a poor job, I also am going to want to point out that I don't think White gave an answer, and that even though maybe Turek didn't do the best job, classical apologetics still does have an answer to the problem of evil. So, that's kind of the motivation for the video.
Okay, well then I'll defend Frank if you don't mind.
Go for it.
All right. So this is the starting of the video.
Story of
Can you see
him
it?
encountering a young man at Berkeley, had a universal negation sign over the cross, and Michael put me on the spot by asking if I knew of anything other than God that was spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Now, if you're a presuppositionalist at all, you just went, oh. Well, guess what? Here's the rest of it. My mind immediately shut.
David, why do presuppositionalists go, ugh?
Probably because they have something against, apparently they have something against demonstrating the existence of a God before seeking the identity of that God. They seem to have a big issue with building your case step by step, and they want you to be able to get, everything in one step.
Gotcha.
Got back to a 1985 debate between Christian Greg Bahnsen and atheist Gordon Stein at the University of California, Irvine. The topic of the debate was, does God exist? Dr. Bahnsen made the case that logic, science, and morality cannot be explained by atheism, but are explained well by Christian theism. Christian theism, Dr. Turek. I found it fascinating that you quoted what I'm about to play for you, because Dr. Bahnsen would have severely rebuked you in the preceding chapter for talking about some type of undefined theism. He said in this very debate, that is an incoherent position to defend. I don't think you agree with Dr. Bahnsen in this debate. Now here's the thing. Already in Dr. Turek's book, I've read all sorts of things I completely agree with. We completely agree that the atheist cuts the very ground of reality from out underneath himself. We agree with so many things, but the point is, the only reason we agree on these things is because we share a Christian worldview. The person you're talking to doesn't share that worldview. They are in moral rebellion against God. They are not at a moral neutral point. They are in rebellion against God. And so to put them in a position of judging these things when they have the wrong worldview, that's the whole point of the difference between evidentialism and presuppositionalism, is that it's focused upon the reality of man as fallen, rebellious creature. And you do not make the fallen, rebellious creature the standard of all things. You do not make the rebellious creature the judge of these things, because he will not judge them correctly. He will not judge them correctly. And so he goes through, and what I'm going to do is I tracked it down instead of reading it to you. This is one of the great classics in debate history. It's too bad that the quality of sound isn't so good, but here's what he quotes in.
Dude, before we move on, I have to comment on his Borg technology in the background. It is so hilarious that a Calvinist has this Borg device in the background. I mean, it looks just like the Star Trek, except it's not all green, right? So, like, the Borg, no one knows, are machines. They're controlled. They have a hive mind. They have no free will. I just thought that was funny. I would point it out.
In the book. Very, very plainly, Gordon Stein ran into a buzzsaw, had no idea what he was getting into. No idea at all. I've encountered the exact same attitude in people. They don't bother to read your stuff. They don't think I have anything worthwhile to say. And stuff like this happens when that happens. Here's what happened. Gordon Stein at first, Dr. Bahnsen is questioning Stein, and then they'll switch over. Just a couple of minutes. Here's that portion of that debate.
You can ask Frank. Oh no, let's go on to evil, because you brought up the word evil and you said I'm supposed to bring up the word evil, and then you totally eliminated and went around the problem of evil. So I want to talk a little bit about the problem of evil. You said that in order that evil proves God because objective evil proves objective good.
Yeah.
I'm telling you there's no objective evil either.
Well, then what are you complaining about?
What I'm complaining about is I want to know about the real problem of evil that Christianity faces. If God is all-powerful and omniscient and omnibenevolent, why does he need babies to be born with cancer?
Okay. Now, actually, what you're talking about here is a theological question that can be answered if the scriptures are true by going to the scriptures, but we're
Listen for the dancing. Listen for the dancing.
No, hold on.
We've got an all-powerful God. He can do whatever he wants, and he doesn't need babies to have cancer. We've got an all-knowing God, so he knows every baby that's going to get cancer. Now, the only thing left is benevolence. Define benevolence and tell me why a God who can do anything under any circumstances needs babies with cancer.
Excellent question.
I know.
We live in a fallen world, don't we?
That's a good excuse.
Well,
but you can't blame
but
Adam.
What if it's true?
Oh, what if anything is true? The question is,
we're here to debate,
why do we need?
All right, dude, we got to stop it there for a second. All right, so David, I want to hear your thoughts here on this.
Yeah.
So
here's kind of an issue that I have with Turek's way out of the problem of evil. If an atheist is trying to use evil as an argument against the existence of God on the basis that evil is a real thing in the world, then Turek's argument will work, right? Because atheists will just point out that an atheist doesn't actually have the grounding for objective good or evil without some sort of appeal to a god. But so, in that way, you can point out that sort of argument is self-refuting. However, Silverman has, changed it up here. Silverman has, agreed that on his worldview, there's not such a thing as, objective good or evil, but he's using it as an internal critique of Christianity. So he's saying, yes, on my worldview, there is no such thing as evil. However, on your worldview, there is such a thing as evil. And that is a problem for your worldview because you've got God who is, all powerful, all knowing, and omnibenevolent. And so this is where I think, saying that, just saying that you don't have a basis for good and evil, that isn't going to answer the objection because they're not using this as an evidence against your position. They're using this as an argument that your position is internally inconsistent. I think that's actually a much better way for atheists to go. Rather than trying to say evil disproves God, is to say that the existence of evil would be incompatible on the Christian or theistic worldview. And so this is, of course, where you have to come up with an actual theodicy at this point. You can't just say, oh, well, you're stealing from my worldview. Well, no, they're not with this particular strategy. And so that's kind of, one way I don't think Turek really answers that question in the debate. There are a number of ways that Christians have, or rather, Christians have explained the existence of evil within their worldview. The most common response is, of course, the free will defense that people have. The ability to do good or evil due to free will that God has given them, and that's a good thing. But, God can't be controlling what people do if their wills are really free, and so they have to be able to do evil. Another, response would be a soul-building theodicy, something like, without evil, we wouldn't be the people who we are. So the choices that we have to make under, these terrible circumstances, that helps build us into the people that we become. And so that's another plausible reason that God could allow evil. Another response, I think, one that I find interesting would be a skeptical theist theodicy. And skeptical theism is basically, you're just pointing out that in order for an atheist to really get any mileage out of the problem of evil, they have to show that there is no conceivable good that could ever come out of this evil. In other words, you're just putting the burden of proof back on the atheist to say, you can't just stop it there. If it's possible that good can come out of evil, then God has a good reason for allowing evil. So the atheist essentially has to show that no good could ever come out of this, and obviously they can't meet that burden of proof. So, right there, those are three positive theodicies, reasons that God could allow evil in the world. The point there is that White is kind of trying to make the case that the classical apologist doesn't have a response to the problem of evil.
Yeah, but David, we're going to get to that part. We're going to get to that part at least. For me, I see that Frank Turek does answer this question because I have no sympathy. If the atheist wants to jump into my worldview, then Frank just gave him the answer in a very short way. He said it's a theological question. There's no dancing there. If you're gonna take on my worldview and say I have there's a problem within my worldview, I'm going to tell you yes, and we have it answered theologically. If you don't like that answer, then that's on you. If you don't like the problem that man fell and we live in a fallen world, that's what we believe. And if you're just going to discount that and say we're dancing around the subject, no, we're not. We're giving you an answer. If just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not an answer.
Oh yeah, I
You
agree
see
with
what I'm
that.
saying?
Yeah.
So
If
it's
you're
kind of like, and this is, and I wanted to stop it here because I wanted to point that out first because he's like, well, what if it's true? And Silverman doesn't have a response. He just says, well, what if anything's true? Well, I mean, that's what they're kind of there to debate. And if Frank gave him an answer, he didn't dance around the subject. He said, hey, this is a theological question that I'm going to have to use scripture to answer. And that's true. And this is before it gets heated, right? This is before it gets crazy and David Silverman interrupts Frank and interrupts Frank and interrupts Frank. So I don't think Frank did a bad job here. I think Frank was just bulldozed. You know, as Greg Kokel talks about. You know, you have these different types of personalities, and David Silverman just bulldozed him. He just, you know, did this the steam engine on him. He just like rolled over. Yeah, steamrolling. So I kind of see that Frank did answer it, and I do got to say that Frank does jump in and out, you know, of trying to answer it with a theodicy, and you know, kind of says, well, stop, you're stealing from my worldview type thing, which I don't think is very constructive.
Yeah, well, the problem I
yeah.
think the biggest issue I have with Turek is that instead of giving his own responses, he goes and plays the reasonable faith video, which, you know, it's a fine answer to the problem of evil,
Yeah.
but in a debate, you have to give the arguments. You can't let a video do your arguing for you. So that's kind of what I was saying. But I do want to agree with you that, yes, if you're going to, you know, critique the Christian worldview internally, you can't just pick the parts of it that you want. You would have to pay attention to the whole thing if you're performing an internal critique. And I think Turek was kind of setting up for that. And then Silverman kind of steamrolled him, and for whatever reason, he decided to go to the video and let that do it. I think that was his big mistake.
Yeah, and that could be. And I see that. But, you know, he did answer it. I just wanted to point that out before we move forward.
Why does God need babies to be born with cancer?
Hold on.
Please.
Let me.
Just
God
bring up your
doesn't
slide.
need it. God might allow it.
Because he's omnibenevolent?
Okay. Yeah. Hold on. Let's get there.
Let's get.
I can't say anything better than this 1 minute and 46-second video, which I'm going to show you, and hopefully it'll
I don't
work.
want a video. I want you to tell me.
Oh, I will tell you because I'm telling you through this video. Okay, so stand by. I think we need HDMI 3 on. It is? Hey, stand by. Dun, 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 dun. All right.
This better be good, man. This better be good. If it's not good, I'm totally going to kick your butt.
Hey, there's no such thing as good. It's all relative.
It is all relative.
That was a good point.
You got to listen. You got to watch closely, David.
All right, what was that? You said that was a good point?
I think that was a good point when he said this better be good, and then he says, I mean, I know what
that's my biggest problem.
I know what he meant. Obviously, he meant good, as in like a good answer. But that was just funny. That was a good joke right there.
Yeah. But you know what's funny to me is this is where I think Frank is the weakest. Is he tries to play funny guy, and I think it throws him off.
And also, I mean, this has always been one of my big criticisms of Frank Turek is just that he's all about like these one-liner like gotchas stuff.
Yeah,
like, I mean,
right.
He does it well, but sometimes like when he's in a real debate, like that often even works when he's like answering questions on like from students and stuff. But when he's like up against a real debater, it's not about, you know, getting points with gotcha lines. It's you know, you've got to give a substantial response. And so I think Frank does great with his university campus work. His live debates are not always my favorite.
Not always. I've seen a couple that were good. I thought the one with him and Hitchens, because they kind of like played off of each other, of their personalities. I thought that one was good. So if anybody wants to watch that, they can look that up.
I'm sorry, you got a bad angle here, but you really got to watch closely. You right, guys, ready to go? We got sound? Here we go.
Is God good? If he is, why is there suffering and evil? Let's assume for the moment that God is all-powerful. This means that God can do anything that is logically possible. So he can create galaxies and subatomic particles and rainforests and you. But God cannot do what is logically impossible. He cannot make a square circle or a one-ended stick. So can God make a rock so big that he can't lift it? No. So what if, when God created human beings, he wanted them to be free? Freedom's a good thing. But if humans are to be free, they cannot be forced to obey God. Because freedom without choice is like a square circle. It's a logical contradiction. No choice, no freedom. God didn't want robots. He wanted real people. The first humans endowed with the awesome power of free choice abused their freedom. The tragic consequences of their bad choice and our bad choices ripple across the world. God is responsible for the fact of freedom, but humans are responsible for their acts of freedom. But let's remember, we don't suffer alone. God will put an end to suffering and evil. And God became a man to suffer with us. God is good, and he wants real people like you to know him, but the free choice is yours.
So the ultimate answer to the question is we have free will. And why do we have free will? Because that's the only way we can have love.
Free will.
Yes,
free will. You're actually
by the
saying
way,
God wants babies to be born with cancer so that we can have free will. We couldn't have free will if babies didn't have cancer.
No. What I'm saying is
That's what you're
the
saying.
entrance of evil into the universe was a result of free choice. And the reason we had free choice was because that's the only way we could have love, but this also creates the possibility for evil.
The entrance of evil into the universe was a result of free choice.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a second,
Yes.
okay? Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, and God is there with them.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you brought it up.
Yeah, no,
I'm allowed to do this.
I understand.
You want to keep going on this?
Yeah, I want to finish the thought here on evil, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's keep doing this because this is good stuff.
Okay, all right, good.
Because when it comes down to it, Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden with God, and God is omniscient, and God knows the future, and God puts the tree of knowledge of good and evil in spot X.
Yes.
And when he does that, he's omniscient, and he knows that Adam is going to eat that fruit.
Yeah.
He knows it's going to cause the fall of man, and billions of souls will go to hell, and according to you, babies will start being born with cancer.
Okay.
If he puts the tree of knowledge over here, it doesn't happen. Or if he doesn't put it there at all, it doesn't happen. But God puts it where he knows with 100% certainty that Adam is going to eat of that fruit. Who made that choice?
God knows the end from the beginning.
Yeah.
And he created the universe, and he created he knew what would happen.
Anytime you want to answer the question.
I'm getting there. But that doesn't mean people don't have free choice. And you're saying that God then could not have done that if somebody sins. Well, let me ask you a question.
That's not what I said at all. What I asked you was.
I think Frank Turek is really just trying to do the tactics approach, but it's not really working for him.
No, I think he's probably also I think he probably needs to take a minute and really think through what he's going to say, and he's trying to respond quickly, and that's probably why he's fumbling a bit.
Yeah, but do you notice that he jumps in and tries to ask a question? You see, he's trying to use the Roadrunner tactic.
Yeah, and I think also Silverman's objection, he's not being really clear with what is he trying to say? That because God knows it's going to happen, therefore he causes it to happen, or it would have been better for him not to do it altogether and not have the evil in the world. It's not entirely clear to me what his objection on that is, but as far as Christian theology is concerned, it was never part of God's plan to have, this perfect paradise that always existed. That's always, something that was intended to follow through, but always after human history. So I don't know if Silverman just doesn't know that, but that redemption history has always been part of God's plan from the very beginning. So it wasn't something that took him by surprise, but also the fall was something that he knew would happen and that he, intended to happen, not in the sense of causing it to happen, but something that he intended to happen for the purpose of bringing about redemption history. So at least within Christian theology, this is nothing that took God by surprise, and it's not something that God was trying to avoid.
Yeah, well, not just that, but you also, I don't think I would have answered it quite like Frank. I would have probably used like, well, how do you know if he moved it here, they still wouldn't have done it, And I think he gets to that later, but it's like, you can't make that assumption. It's like C.S. Lewis says, if there's a war, right, and you're saying that all wars are bad, or this war never caused any good, you're saying that you have another ideal that doesn't exist. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That you're basing that off of something that never did happen. So how do you know it doesn't? It wouldn't have caused what it caused, or it would have been better if the war never took place at all.
Right.
You see what I mean?
No, yeah. That Silverman can't assume that possible state of affairs really would exist.
Exactly, and that's the thing, is he's playing God in a sense. He's like, well, hey, if God would, or he's playing the, like, if God did this type of game, it could have turned out differently, but he doesn't know that. He's in no position to know that.
Right. I mean, his assumption is that God wanted to not have any sort of evil or any sort of sin happen in the world. And obviously we would agree that God does not ideally want that, but we would say that God does ultimately plan around that, the free choices of man. So that God includes that in his plan, if I can put it that way.
And like Frank already answered him about freedom, freedom does require a choice. You have to have something to choose from. And that's part of the free will. And it's like Silverman doesn't get that. And then it looks like he just glossed over the whole logically impossible thing as well. Mm-hmm. But before we go any further, we're about to see James White's Superman entrance into why his method is better and why the only consistent Arminian is an open theist.
Who made the choice in the Garden of Eden? You said
Adam and Eve did.
Adam and Eve made the choice. Now, let me ask a question. Let me put it this way. God knows with 100% certainty that if I put the tree of knowledge here, billions of souls go to hell and babies get cancer, according to you, which doesn't fall.
By the way, how many times have I said the only consistent Arminian is an open theist? How many times have I said it?
Oh boy.
Has anyone proven it any more clearly than the atheist is right now? Isn't that fascinating? Because the open theist goes, nope, he had no idea. Nope, didn't know. But the stuttering and the stammering right now is because if you don't have a sovereign decree of God, and if your ultimate good is human autonomy rather than divine autonomy, this is what you're stuck with.
Either.
Is that fair, David?
Not at all. So, I mean, he makes the claim that the only consistent Arminian is an open theist several times. And sometimes he's using that, obviously, when he's committing the modal fallacy and confusing certainty with necessity and such. But, here saying that, you're stuck with this kind of scenario where, you don't really have an explanation for why God would do that when he knows with certainty that the sin will take place, that the fall will happen. Again, that assumes that God's purpose was to not have this happen, but that is not the Arminian position. The Arminian believes that Christ is the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. We believe that God always intended for redemption history to happen as he wanted. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to say that God caused the sins that actually happened. No, we say that God always knew that these sins are going to happen, and he included them in his plan. Does that mean he wants them to happen? Well, not in the direct sense, and that God's perfect will would be that these don't happen, but in the sense that God does want people to be free, and that's his greater desire, Well, yes, he does want that to happen in that sense, and that he wants people to have that free choice, both in their own actions and in their own salvation. So it's not as silly as White, wants to make out, but he leaves all the nuance and all the details out.
Yeah, and didn't the video say God is responsible for the fact of freedom and humans are responsible for their acts of freedom?
Yeah, I thought that was a good distinction.
Yeah, I thought that was great. And yeah, it explains it well, and it keeps it short and simple. But yeah, I think just White's, he's always overcritical of anybody else but his position. I think the only person he's nice to is Dr. Brown.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and here's the
That's
other
it.
point. Here's the other point to make there. Does his view really make it any better? All right, so on the
Yeah, that's something
Arminian
to keep in
view,
mind.
on the Arminian view, God knows it's going to happen, but doesn't cause it to happen. On his view, God knows it's going to happen because God causes it to happen. Explain to me why that's better, Dr. White. Why is it better if God is causing it than on the Arminian view when he just knows that it's going to happen?
Right, right.
But I'll let you pass on
But wait.
But if
Stop.
I put it over here...
No, hold on.
No, this is the
There's
point.
nothing wrong with babies getting cancer because it's all relative.
Oh, there he goes.
You know what? I judge that.
What does he judge
I
that?
judge that
Well,
to be
that's
wrong.
just your personal
But you're
problem,
also
then.
avoiding...
Now,
What does it mean to judge that? What is he judges that to be wrong? Okay, who cares what you say? I don't know. He jumped into our worldview, so I don't have much sympathy for him at that point.
Right. I mean, I did think Turek is kind of it's kind of
Yeah,
dodging
Derek
the
did make the
question
mistake there.
because I think again he's still trying to use it as an internal critique there, and Turek
Yeah.
and Turek's trying to go back to the but you're stealing from my worldview. But Silverman admittedly didn't draw this out because I think he was trying to finish his line of thought or whatever in that moment in the debate.
Yeah, I just think that was a slip up for Turek myself. So
He had this wasn't his
Same
best
point.
debate.
I don't think in the section where we play, but in one of the thing, I get him the same point. He's okay. He's being inconsistent. Okay, fine. The atheist's wrong, but you're not answering the question that way, are you? No, you're just saying, well, you can't raise that objection. You don't have sufficient ground to raise that objection. Agreed. Doesn't mean you've answered the objection.
in a great big way.
No. If you allow me to continue with my presentation, I'll go into it.
Another video? I want you to answer me.
It's not another video.
Okay, answer me. When God put the tree of knowledge of good and evil here instead of here, knowing that when he put it here, knowing with 100% certainty...
I got it. Let me answer it. Okay,
Go for it.
Here's the problem. The problem here, David, is that you're assuming that God could have created another universe where nobody sinned. That, while it's logically possible, it might not be actually achievable with free creatures.
So sin was not a method.
I hope y'all recognize what that was. That was Molinism. That was Molinism raising its next to impossible to explain in a fast way head. But it just sort of popped up there. You got to come up with something. If you're not going to go with open theism, simple foreknowledge just collapses if it's pressed hard enough. So you got to go somewhere.
All right, Dave, does simple foreknowledge fall apart at this point? Is James right? White right?
I mean, no, because we explained that before, that would not be a problem with simple foreknowledge. But I mean, as it happens, I don't hold the simple foreknowledge anyway.
Exactly.
I think middle knowledge is probably correct.
Yeah, I do too. But you see, he criticized Molinism, but he didn't really give a critique of it. You know what I mean? If you're going to sit here and bash it, at least address it.
Oh, he doesn't. He never does that. He doesn't know how.
He doesn't. Yeah, I don't think so either. But again, we're seeing this old Epicurean song and dance play out as we do over and over again, and it's kind of irritating. I think we've already addressed this in our first PORA Raw.
Oh yeah.
Right? With a genetically modified skeptic.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We've.
All right. So let's continue on.
It was not an option.
No, sin, if God creates a universe with free creatures, he might not be able to create a universe where everybody freely chooses not to sin. So he creates the universe we're in now. People freely choose to sin, and then his job, the whole purpose of the Bible, and we're not really even here to talk about the Bible, but since you brought it up, the whole theme of the Bible from Genesis to Maps is one word. and that is redemption. You have paradise lost in Genesis, paradise regained in Revelation.
You are totally avoiding my question.
No, I'm getting there.
Before Adam ate that apple, he was without sin.
Yes.
Before he ate that apple, he was without sin. God.
Now, see, do you see what the problem with the answer was? Saying redemption? That's wrong. It's God's glory. Is redemption part of the way in which God glorifies himself? Central. But it isn't the central thing. It's God's glory. It's all about God. Once you take it off of God, once you take it off of his purpose, once you no longer have a sovereign God, once you no longer have a sovereign decree, it's not a coherent system. It doesn't make sense anymore. And even the atheists can tell. They can see that you've got big holes, and the big holes are because the theology you're standing on ain't big enough. Theology matters, and it determines the apologetic method.
All right, David, what do you got to say, man?
Well, part of that is right. I mean, in a sense, if I think you do have to, in order to make sense of evil and things in the world, you have to look at God having, a bigger plan through, things to accomplish. I don't know that, his own glory is his primary goal there. So, I mean, I'm fine with, going with Turek and saying that redemption was important to him. And I would even agree with White that, the two of those things are not completely separable from each other. I think God is glorified through the plan of redemption. But where I disagree with White is that you, in order to have that sort of God-centered system where, God having a plan that evil is included in, is I don't think you have to have God determining everything. I think you have huge problems in your system when that's the way it is. So I think what's better is to, say God has a plan, but, he has the knowledge of these sinful actions that'll happen, and he works even through the sinful actions, even though they are not good themselves, that God brings good out of them. That way you maintain God's holy character. God's not responsible for committing the evil actions like he would be on White's view, but you don't have that, and yet you can still have God having the plan. So White's assumption there is, even though I would strongly contest some of the terminology he used there, but his assumption that requires determinism in some way, that's simply wrong. But so his basic answer is right, that yes, I think you do need to focus on God having a plan, but you don't have to capitulate to Calvinism or determinism to get that.
Absolutely, bro. I'm totally with you 100%. I don't think you could have said it better, so we'll just move on.
Methodology that you have to use. Okay. So let's compare that then with the same topic when it came up with somebody else that isn't nearly as nicely dressed as Dr. Turek was, because he's wearing a bow tie. But here's me and Silverman.
I'm really having a good time tonight. I hope you're all having a good time tonight and enjoying yourselves. I really appreciate the hospitality being offered. Dr. White, let's talk a bit about original sin. Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden. Before they eat that apple, we'll call it an apple, they're perfect, yes?
Hey, look, it's David Pullman from the last show.
Testing 1, 2. Okay, there you go. Perfect, as in God created them to be upright. Yes.
Perfect, as in knowing good from evil.
Not in the sense that they had not experientially as yet. No.
Okay. So Adam is in the Garden of Eden, and God puts the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. Adam hasn't sinned yet. Adam hasn't eaten the apple yet. God knows at that point in time that you and I are going to have this conversation right now.
Not only knows that he decreed it, that's why he knows it. His knowledge is based upon his decree.
Okay. So Adam...
Y'all realize the two of us just left each. I'm no longer responding. The paths just diverged between my response and Dr. Turek's response. Because I don't think he would say that. Only Reformed people can say what I just said. He decreed it would happen. That's how he knows it would happen. So we've just diverged. You'll see what the effect of that is down the road.
Eating the apple was part of God's plan.
Yes, sir.
Are there babies in hell?
Are there babies in hell?
Yeah.
As you may have, I'm not sure if you were quoting me when you were talking or not, I believe that God has the exact same freedom in the salvation of infants that he has in the salvation of adults.
That's not my question.
Well, but I'm explaining it since you asked, are there quote-unquote babies in hell? I believe that God has the same freedom in the salvation of infants that he has in adults, since all of us, no matter what our stage of development, are fallen sons and daughters of Adam. Then God would not be under any compulsion to show mercy to anyone. But I believe that he does, based upon the very same freedom that he has in saving any adult person as well. So I do not know, I cannot look someone, and I've been a hospital chaplain, so I've had to do this more than once. I cannot look at someone and play God and tell them what God is going to do in that situation. My response always is, the judge of all the earth will do right, and leave it to the very same thing that I do with my children or anyone in my family.
So when Adam was about to eat that apple, when God put that tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden, he knew that he would be in this situation right now. He decreed it. He insisted on it. He made it happen.
He chose to glorify himself in this particular fashion through the atonement of Christ. Yeah.
He made it happen.
When you say made it happen, what do you mean? Are you differentiating between primary movers, secondary means, et cetera, et cetera?
I'm saying that if I take my keys and I drop them, the keys have no will. I'm saying that I know that I'm going to drop these keys and they're going to fall. I knew that was going to happen. But God was more sure than I was that Adam would eat the fruit, that Adam would cause the fall of that would cause the fall of man, and that billions and billions of souls created by God who he loved would go to hell as a result.
God's knowledge of the future is not analogous to your knowledge of physical laws. That would be a category error. However, the point that you're making is that God knows the future and that the future flows from his own decree, of course, what did not follow was the conclusion that you included in your question.
Is it not then God's will that billions and billions of souls are in hell?
It is God's will to glorify himself in the salvation of particular people and to demonstrate his justice in his just punishment of many others. I don't know. First of all, I don't think there's anybody in hell right now, so I want to correct that. I believe that's a future state. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know what the percentage of people is going to be who are going to experience his grace, and the percentage of people is going to be who will not. So I don't know how many people there are, but their just punishment was not only known to God, but the result of his will from the beginning. Yes, no question about that.
So you don't think that there's anybody damned?
No, I do believe that there are people that are damned. All I said was hell is if you're familiar with the book of Revelation, it says that death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire. Mm-hmm. The dead right now are not in a place called hell, they're in a place called Hades. They're not the same thing. Maybe you're confusing those two terms.
Mm-hmm. But God had all of this in mind when Adam ate the apple.
Ephesians
in fact, it was God's will. It was God's intention. God could have stopped it if he didn't want it to happen, but he chose not to.
Certainly God could have stopped anything that he did not want to have happen, as he does very regularly in curbing the evil of man, and we never thank him for that. But I do differentiate very strongly between talking about God's decree and the fact that God's will, as revealed to us, is found in his law. We don't know what God's secret decree is. God's will says, thou shalt not murder. So you need to differentiate when you're using the term will, because you're asking a Christian theologian what he believes about that, and I will have to differentiate on the basis of the scripture at that point.
I'm confused.
Okay.
God could put everyone in heaven anytime he wanted to. God could show his grace. God could show himself. God has, and many times during the Bible.
Very complex question. You've already gotten to two different places that I would have to interrupt you and to answer part of the question.
Please do.
When you said God could, are you talking about before creation, before he began to do his work? Or are you talking about now?
Both.
Well, theoretically, prior to the fall of man and to the working out of his will, God could have just created us all to go to heaven, and that would have been it. He never would have glorified himself in the cross. He never would have demonstrated his love or mercy. He could have, theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
But once the fall took place, then no longer is that a theoretical possibility, because God has already begun to act, make promises, and God's not.
I think we get the gist of it.
Yeah.
I think we get the gist there,
All right, so
So-
I don't know about you, but my whole thing is that I feel like David Silverman was not expecting that response. So it's not
Yeah.
so much that James White's position is so much better and more coherent than Frank Turek's. I think it's that Frank Turek didn't represent his terribly well in that particular instance, and I think it's that David Silverman was not expecting the sort of answers that James White was giving. But that doesn't mean that there aren't good objections to the perspective that James White is taking. I think that he faces huge problems with his, for example, how can God be considered holy and good when he himself decrees and causes all the evil that comes to pass, right?
Right.
So, but, David Silverman did not take that tack. He did not, start asking those sorts of objections. He was still I think he was expecting White to, have similar answers to Frank Turek. And so he was just kind of shooting from the hip after that. And obviously it didn't go well for him.
Yeah. And not only that, but I love how Dr. White did stay calm and collected throughout the whole time. I gotta hand it to him. I mean, that was like smooth debate skill right there.
He is an excellent debater. I've said that before.
He is, man. He is, and that's the crazy thing is he just like calmly went through each and everything. And yeah, I think yes, Silverman was a little lost, but the context of the debate was a lot different too. The whole atmosphere was different. They had two robust guys that are, quick-witted and sharp versus somebody that's calm, cool, and collected versus, Silverman that is, rambunctious a lot when he gets into it. White de-escalated the problem. Turret up with this funny guy stuff,
Yeah. I don't think there's a lesson there.
So I mean, there is.
It's better in a debate to give a cool reasoned answer. As White, even though I don't really think White's answers were any good, present your answers in a cool, reasoned way is better than to shoot off one-liners. So I mean, I will give that to White. He's an excellent debater. I've said he is before. He's an intelligent guy. But I don't think he's got a lot of substance to his argument, and certainly Silverman failed to expose that. So I would definitely hand that debate to James White, but that doesn't mean that White's position is therefore better than Turek's.
Yeah, and that's what he gleaned from it is that my method is better because I answered the question better. Well, if that's the case, there's times where people, anybody answered a question in a bad way, and if you answer it in a bad way, then the other person's position's better. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I mean, comparing it that way is just a little bit disingenuous to me.
Yeah, and this is a big problem I have with presuppositional apologetics is they seem to be, and really with James White followers in general, because I think the reason they like him is because he's able to do stuff like he did in that debate. But it's not about, giving a good answer to the question. It's not about really explaining or understanding why, God allows evil. Because if you see, when like somebody like Leighton Flowers will really push James White on this kind of stuff, James White always just like, well, you're flattening it out, and he never responds to Flowers on these sorts of things. So James White, he does not have an answer for these sorts of things either. And I forgot where I was going with that, but I think I got my basic point out.
Yeah, and overall, I mean, I like James in some debates. But some debates and his attitude that he brings with him, I just think that's what kind of grates people. And I think that comes with the presuppositionalist platform.
Yeah. I remember where I was going to go with that. I was going with that thought that it seems like they're not really all that interested in, giving a good answer and having a response. They're interested with shutting the person down. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm for, I don't want to shut them down, but I want to give them a good answer. So I really want to answer the question. And I think to some extent, that's what classical apologetics is more interested in. And presuppositional apologetics, they, they seem to be very taken with people like White, who can maybe shut someone down, but aren't actually, giving a substantial answer.
Yeah, and I don't think that gets the conversation anywhere or saves souls as well either. I think that's a major deficiency in a presuppositional apologetics is that, and
I've
we
never
joke
met
around saying
anyone.
it makes more. Yeah, I mean we joke around all the time saying it makes more atheists than it does Christians. But with that being said, I think we've covered our section of presuppositional apologetics with tonight's video. Um, if we can get a debate between one that would between a presuppositionalist and a classical theist, that'd be cool. But
And
there's
and
another
we might
thing that I
also have
didn't
a panel
hear.
discussion.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're gonna have the panel discussion on apologetics in general. That's not really just going after and talking presuppositionalism, but the thing is that you know I would love to see a debate, and I would like to see us cover the problem of induction because that's a big one that presuppositionalists use, and we didn't get to really get into that. So I think that would be fun if we can have anybody in on that. I mean, just shoot us a personal message, and me and David will make it happen. So yeah, with that, we got some signed up for you guys coming up in the near future. David, you got anything you want to add?
No, yeah, just say, we may be doing a panel discussion on apologetic methodology. So obviously that won't be exclusively on precept, but it would be included. So I didn't want anyone to think that this was the last word on the issue. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
that was about it.
yeah. This is kind of like our last hurrah for it, but it's not like the conclusion. Like, we cover issues over and over again. Why? Because people need to hear it. People need to hear different angles and different views, and bringing different people on and having different people debate these issues can challenge us, and then we learn as well. And that's what we want for you guys too. So another thing is we're having a couple of debates coming up that are going to be interesting. David's going to be debating eternal security coming up.
Yep.
And then we got, and then we got our homeboy Travis Werner. He's going to be debating the Trinity, which is going to be pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, we got a couple shows lined up for you guys. This Saturday, you can catch me on Skeptics and Seekers. I'll be there with David Johnson. So
What are you discussing?
yeah, just stay tuned. We're actually going to be talking to Randall Rouser, so that's going to be
Nice.
pretty cool. We're going to be discussing his one of his books, so that I got to finish reading. So yeah, but anyways, everybody stay tuned. Dave, you got any last words?
No, I think you got it, man.
All right, brother. You guys take care and stay tuned for more to come.